Injuries are a part of the game. They're going to happen, and they're going to happen every year. But can we trust them coming off of an injury is the question. Let's talk about a few guys coming off injuries. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Jake, Fantasy Headliners. Today coming to you talking about people who were hurt last year. And there were a lot of them. I mean, you could have probably fielded an all-pro team with the players that got hurt last year. But now they're back. But do we trust them? Do we want to take the risk? Is there a risk? Today we're going to talk about a few players that are coming off some pretty major injuries. But I think we can trust them again this year. Let's get into the list. First guy on my list is going to be probably one of the first ones drafted on your draft day, and that's going to be David Johnson, and coming off the dislocated wrist injury that he had last year. A lot of people are worried about it. A lot of people are saying, oh, it was a major injury. No, I don't think it was really that major. I'm pretty sure he could have come back if they needed him to, but the Cardinals were so far out of the playoff hunt, they didn't want to risk it. This guy has come back in this year. He looks like he's in the best shape of his life. A new coaching staff dedicated to his work there in the backfield. They've given him a fullback at times to run behind. That's awesome. I mean, this guy can catch the balls out of the backfield. He's going to be in there all three downs. He set a goal for himself for 1,000 yards rushing and receiving. And if anybody can do it, it's him. I mean, he's right up there with the likes of the Le'Veon Bells and Todd Gurley's and Zeke Elliott's. If you're avoiding David Johnson on draft day solely based off of his injury for last year, you have already made a huge mistake in your fantasy draft. Next guy I got on the list is going to be Odell Beckham. And, he's coming off that ankle injury. And if there was ever a player who got hurt and his team felt the most pain, it was probably Odell and the Giants last year. Not that the Giants were going to go out and win the Super Bowl with Odell last year, but you kind of just saw the whole team's spirits got deflated in that one game when every wide receiver on their roster got hurt. It's like they kind of knew what was coming. And Odell coming back, even though he's a complete diva who has some strange antics on the sideline, he is kind of the heart of that team. He is the outspoken one on that team. Eli Manning is maybe a quiet type of leader, being that he's the quarterback, but Odell Beckham has so many things going for him this year. He's healthy. He's pissed that he's number 77 on the overall list for the top players in football. He's in a contract year. He's going to get a huge target share. He's Eli's favorite target. They're going to have to score points. I mean, everything's in his corner this year. Do not avoid Odell Beckham based off of last year's injury. Let's talk about Dalvin Cook for a second. Last year before he tore his ACL, he looked great. I mean, he was, I would say, running away with the Rookie of the Year award, but that's kind of before Alvin Kamara did what he did, so we really don't know. It would have been a great race for the Offensive Rookie of the Year between those two, but we kind of lost out on that. But, Dalvin's back. He's already practicing. He looks great, making cuts, looks quick, and he's in I can't say he's in a better offense, but he's in a high-powered offense similar to how they were last year, which is crazy to say since Case Keenum and Sam Bradford were the quarterbacks. But they did. They had a high-powered offense. They could beat you on the ground. They could beat you through the air, and it's going to be the same thing this year. Kirk Cousins being in town only improves the passing game. If the passing game is improved, it's going to open up things for the run game. I see Dalvin Cook being a solid 3-down back, and I am not avoiding him by any means on draft day based off of last year's injury. All right, let's talk about Allen Robinson now, the Chicago Bears, coming off of his torn ACL. It's another guy. I'm not going to be avoiding him based off of last year's injury. However, I may be somewhat avoiding him anyway, just because of the situation he's in there in Chicago. I get it. Chicago's going to have a way improved offense. They're going to be way better than they were last year on the offensive side of the ball. They're going to be able to throw the ball more. They're still going to have to run the ball there in Chicago. They did draft Anthony Miller, and I really like Anthony Miller, and I think that kind of hurts Allen Robinson a little bit. They still have Taylor Gabriel there also. Tariq Cohen will be used more this year. I do like Allen Robinson, but I do not want Allen Robinson as my number 1 or number 2 receiver. And I know that sounds greedy because he's probably going to be your number 2 for where he's being drafted. But if for some reason he slips because others are worried about this injury, if I can get him as my number 3 all day long, I'm taking Allen Robinson. Or if you're going a 0 RB strategy and want extra wide receivers, it's probably somebody you can get as your number 3 that way. I do like him. The injury doesn't worry me too much. It's just being in Chicago, no chemistry with Trubisky. I don't have as high of expectations for Allen Robinson this year as I did in years past. Here's a name we've all been talking about here for a while. Let's talk about Julian Edelman. And I had planned on putting him in this episode even before the suspension. And now he's suspended for 4 games, still coming off of an ACL injury. But I actually, can I say that I like this more? I do, though. I kind of like that he got suspended for 4 games because now people are going to avoid him based on that. And he was already somebody you could get as your number 3, maybe even 4 wide receiver. And now he's going to fall, and it's for sure somebody you can probably get as your number 4 wide receiver. And then after 4 weeks, he comes back, and you're going to have yourself a solid target in Tom Brady's offense, Tom Brady's favorite target, outside of Gronk. And he's going to be able to put up huge PPR numbers especially. He still has some standard value, not as much as he does in PPR. But listen, as you can see, we're talking about ACLs a lot. It's not like it's somebody that's going to hinder the rest of his career. He may not be out there returning kicks or anything like that anymore, but he's still going to have tons of value. I like Julian Edelman a lot. He's somebody I'll definitely be targeting on draft day, and now you can get him for such a cheap price, it's hard to pass on him. Next is going to be Pierre Garçon in San Francisco. He's coming back from a non-displaced fracture in his neck. That sounds bad, and it kind of worries me a little bit, I guess. I do like where he's at there in San Francisco. He'll be one of the top targets for Jimmy Garoppolo. They did draft Dante Pettis, and they still have Marquise Goodwin. But Pierre Garçon is going to be somebody that's going to be highly targeted. The only issue that I have with Pierre Garçon is what happens when he gets, hit hard the first few times. How is that neck going to hold up? He will be back and he'll be fully healed. But anytime you're dealing with the head or the neck region in football, it just worries me that these injuries, can't pop back up again. I'm not going to say I'm going to avoid Pierre Garçon, but by no means am I targeting him in drafts this year either. Hey, it's a show talking about injuries, so it wouldn't be complete unless we talked about Jordan Reed. The dude's had 62 injuries in the last 3 years, it seems like, and hopefully he's behind some of them. We don't know. He's supposedly going to start the season healthy, but he does that almost every year, and then it doesn't last. He'd had hamstring issues and had off-season toe surgery, and he gets a new quarterback this year in Alex Smith. I do like the situation, and Jordan Reed has, I believe, last time I checked, he was like the 12th or 13th overall tight end in the rankings, and I do like that value because you could probably get him as your number 2 if you wanted to. Maybe pair him up with somebody like a Delaney Walker or something like that, to where you had Jordan Reed on your bench. And if Jordan Reed is healthy, and he's Jordan Reed of a couple years ago, you have yourself a surefire tight end 1 because this position is so thin. Now, if he's the only tight end on your roster, I'd be a little bit worried because the dude just doesn't play full seasons, and he has a tendency to be one of those game time decisions, and come Sunday, he does nothing but make you want to pull your hair out. I like Jordan Reed if I can get him as my tight end 2. Here's somebody who had a lot of hype last year and then came out and tore his ACL right there at the beginning, and it's Cam Meredith of now the New Orleans Saints, then of the Chicago Bears. He had a huge opportunity last year, right? They didn't have Alshon anymore. He was going to be the man. He was going to get a ton of volume. Came out and got hurt, and we never got anything out of it. And the Bears made a mistake with his contract here in the offseason, and next thing you know, he's in New Orleans, which is a great situation because now he's not going to be looked at as the man. He's going to have a little bit more opportunity maybe here, only because he's not going to get the defense's best cornerback. That guy is going to be on Michael Thomas. There's going to be a lot of one-on-one coverage for Cam Meredith, and if he can earn the trust and get some chemistry with Drew Brees, Cam Meredith could go out there and sneakily, which I just made that word up, sneakily have a great year. I would not be surprised one bit if Cam Meredith goes out there and gets close to 800 yards and about 5 to 7 touchdowns this year, just because the defenses are so heavily focused on Michael Thomas and that running game. Plus, he's super cheap. He's definitely somebody I'll be looking at here at the end of all my drafts. Next is going to be Deshaun Watson, and he's already been crowned as a top 3 fantasy quarterback, it seems, by everybody, myself included, just because the kid is so talented. All right, he tore his ACL, last year. Yes, I get it. But he's coming back. He's got no brace. He's practicing already. He looks great. He looks, I don't want to say he looks older, but he just looks more mature this year. If you haven't seen it, go check out some of his OTA minicamp videos. He just looks like he's grown up, and not that he looked young last year, but now he just looks like, a grown quarterback in the NFL. And all reports coming out of Houston are that he has just immensely improved in the offseason, both physically and mentally. And if that's the case, watch out for Deshaun Watson. Has one of the highest ceilings of all quarterbacks, and I'm not concerned about the ACL injury of Deshaun Watson. I do have a feeling that they may curtail him a little bit in the rushing aspect of his job. I can see him throwing for a lot more yards. And look out for Will Fuller and DeAndre Hopkins. I do like Deshaun Watson, but the price tag that you're going to have to pay on draft day in order to get him, I don't know if I'm willing to pay that steep of a price. But if for some reason he slips in your draft and you're staring at him in round 6 to 7 maybe, grab him up. Last on my list is going to be Andrew Luck. And I'm sure by now everybody and their mother has been talking about Andrew Luck and that he was throwing a football last week. That's a good thing. I'm glad that he was out there finally on video throwing a football. Yes, it was a high school-sized football. He wasn't throwing the Duke around, all right? But he's out there, he's moving, and he's throwing. And they're coming out and saying he's going to be ready to go this year, but they've kind of said he's going to be ready to go for the past, how many months. And now is the first time we've actually seen it. If Andrew Luck is healthy, and they take it easy with him in preseason, which I imagine they will, his ADP will climb, but it will not be outrageous. He is definitely somebody that you could probably get in the later rounds. And if he's healthy and can return to form of the Andrew Luck that we knew of from a few years ago, you're getting outrageous value for Andrew Luck. I would just make sure I had a backup just in case. All right, those were the guys on my injury list coming off major injuries for last year. That's just a handful, a couple handfuls of them. There was tons to choose from. If there's anybody out there that I didn't cover that you want to hear about, like always, hit me up down below. Ask me about it. I'll give you my feedback on what I have on them. Really appreciate you guys. Make sure you guys are liking, commenting, subscribing. I'm looking forward to hearing from you guys. We'll talk to you guys later. Thanks.